Well, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome members and officers to this Southern Rural Committee meeting and also welcome anyone watching online. Before we begin, I will invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work.
Good evening, everyone. Just to note, the meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Does anyone have any questions before we start? Okay, I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you. In which case, our first item is apologies for absence. I have tentative apologies from Councillor Barnard, who will make best efforts to attend, however, has a conflicting meeting that he's attending first. I don't have any other apologies, so I assume the Lib Dems will be joining us later. Item 2 is minutes from the previous meeting. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approved as true record of the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 20th of December. May I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any comments on the minutes? That being the case, I will move to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Good stuff. Item 3 is notification of other business. I have none. Item number 4 is chair's announcements. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, point 4823A of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business of the agenda and whenever possible, leave at least an appropriate point in the proceedings. Moving on to item number 5 is an update from Hertfordshire Constabulary. I will hand over to PS Guy Westwood to present.
Hello, thank you very much. I will try and keep this as exciting as possible, but there's a lot of facts and figures, so please stop me if you need a break in it. To start with, I'll go through the team structure. It's the same as it's always been, but we've got a new chief inspector. So Hannah Treadwell has come in as chief inspector. Inspector James Lamp to my left is still with us. And then myself as the sergeant. The PC team is Claire Wallace for Nebworth and Codicott, Claire Ross for Offert and Hoo, and Justin Barnes for Chesfield, Hitchwood and Kimpton. He is currently off sick, so we're trying to cover that the best we can with the other officers. As and when we get anyone else that's going to come in and cover, or when he's back, then obviously we'll let everyone know. PCSO team is still Heather Burrows and Stuart Stone. If I go into our priorities at the moment, next we have the 3 of them, which is speeding, fly tipping in the rural areas, and ASB related to unlawful drug usage in open spaces. We do have our priority setting forums that are coming up. Invites will go out for those shortly within the next couple of weeks. If you'd like to have a think about what the next priorities you would like to see, I would imagine that the same ones are likely to pop back up again. Speeding certainly and fly tipping always seem to be quite popular ones for the rural areas. And with our staffing issues, speeding, we haven't been able to do as much as we would like to have done. Not speeding, the speed enforcement, shall I say. So maybe that's one that people would like to keep. The intention was always to get a rota of areas that we would visit, and then we'll go from location to location, and then when next ones get flagged, we can add them to it. So that's potentially something we can think about. Crimes, again, I will, as with last year and the year before, I will compare from the 1st of April 2022 to 27th of February 2023 and compare with the same period from the year before. I'll start with all crime, and I'll give you the breakdown. Hitchin Rural, this year Hitchin Rural has seen a decrease in crime. 747 crimes recorded this year compared to 786 last year. This bucks the trend for North Herts as a whole and the county. They've both seen an increase. So 5,959 crimes for all of North Herts this year, compared to 5,550 last year, and county-wide, 69,552 this year, compared to 67,702 last year. So we're still in a very safe place to be in North Herts, but we're obviously not going to get complacent over that. Looking at the individual wards, we've seen a decrease for Hitchwood, Offa and Hoo, decrease in Chesfield and Nebworth, but we've actually had an increase in Kimpton and Codicott crime-wise. So our work is going to be working out why we've got an increase in those two wards particularly. Burglary residential next. For Hitchin Rural, North Herts and the county, we have seen an increase. Hitchin Rural, 35 crimes this year compared to 32 last year. North Herts in total, 183 this year compared to 176 last year. And county-wide, 2,282 this year compared to 2,248 last year. So Hitchin Rural proportion of that is still quite low, but it has gone up by 2. Breaking that down by ward to ward, Hitchin, Offa and Hoo has seen a reduction, Chesfield has seen a reduction, and then Kimpton, Nebworth and Codicott have all seen an increase in residential burglaries. Anecdotally looking at it, some of them have been domestic related. And so that's where it's going to be maybe ex-partners that have broken in to potentially get back at their partner or get some property back. So obviously they're still crimes that will bother us, but they're not ones where we've got a sort of a crime series. We've got burglars that are going to be committing any other burglaries for anyone else. And some of those seem to be based around Kimpton. So although they had none last year and they've had 8 burglaries this year, that isn't as worrying for the general public, I don't think, as maybe it looks. It's still somewhere that we're going to be concentrating on. Kimpton certainly somewhere that we need to look into as to why there's been the increase in crime. Burglary, business and community, we've seen an increase again throughout North Herts, the rural and the county. So we've had 19 burglaries this year compared to 10 last year, 138 this year for North Herts compared to 94 last year, 1,139 compared to 992 last year. We are working closely with our bordering forces, and we're looking into this. It would seem to be that it's travelling criminals that are coming from out of county, will work through, they'll work in certain areas and then they'll move somewhere else. Makes it very hard for us to catch up with them, because by the time we start to get a handle on them, they've moved to a completely different county. But that's where our work lies there. And we've had an increase across every ward for those. Theft from motor vehicle. Hitchin Rural, we've had a decrease. Again, we've kicked the trend because there's been an increase for North Herts and the county. This year for Hitchin Rural, we've had 31 theft from motor vehicles compared to 33 last year. North Herts, there were 271 compared to 235 last year, and county-wide 3,768 this year compared to 3,438 last year. Breaking that down ward by ward, it's been a decrease in Hitchwood, Offa and Hoo, decrease in Chestfield and Nebworth. And again, it's Kimpton and Codicott that has seen the increase. These are mainly catalytic converters that are a national problem again. They had disappeared as an issue, but as precious metal prices go up, then again, they become an issue. So that's where we're working to try and look into catalytic converter thefts and see where it is that people are actually taking them. I believe that they're going across seas, that there's not local places that will actually take them anymore. They'll be collecting them in containers and then sending them abroad. Personal robbery, Hitchin Rural, there have been 4, which is exactly the same as last year. North Herts in general has seen a decrease. There were 26 this year compared to 30 last year. County-wide, 548 this year compared to 489 last year. Violence against the person. So this is victim-based assaults, malicious communications, public order, stalking offences. There's been a decrease across the board for the rural, North Herts and county-wide. Except for Kimpton again, there's been a slight increase. Criminal damage, there's been an increase across the board for Hitchin Rural, North Herts and county-wide. 83 this year for Hitchin Rural compared to 77 last year. North Herts 736 compared to 620 last year, and county-wide 6,632 compared to 6,623 last year. Breaking that down, Nebworth is the only one that's seen a decrease. There's been an increase across all other wards. Shoplifting, we don't have so many shops in the rural, but we've seen an increase across the board again, with 38 shopliftings for Hitchin Rural this year compared to 34 last year. 432 for North Herts compared to 280 last year. County-wide 6,369 compared to 5,508 last year. Chestfield has seen the only increase. There's been a decrease across the board. So it's Chestfield that's sort of taken all the crimes, and that's going to be Budgeons at Great Ashby that has led to that. So we'll be working with them, and I think they're actually reporting more to us. I don't think it's an increase in crime as such. It's just they're reporting more. Hate crime has reduced across the CSP from 109 to 97. I can't break that down any further than that, I'm afraid. But that's good because we're working on hate crime, and we initially saw an increase in hate crimes as we tried to encourage reporting. So this is going the direction that we would want it to. That now we're working on it, we're getting less happening, I would hope. Drugs offences down from 22 to 24. Chestfield has seen an increase and Codicott. Kimpton has stayed the same, and we've had a reduction, Hitchwood and Nebworth. ASB reported we've had a reduction, 281 instances this year compared to 309 last year. Gravely, Wymondley and Hitchwood are the only areas that have seen an increase. Neighbourhood Watch continues to grow, and this is good, particularly in the rural area, because we need more people looking out for us to report stuff to us. So we've got 5,388 members, which is a third of the total North Herts coverage, and we're going to continue to push that. The lowest area we've got for coverage is Orton. That's been included because we've got parts of rural in Orton, but Codicott, we've actually got nearly 60% of Codicott, and we only want to keep going more. The more people we have, then the better we're going to be at dealing with things. Fly tipping, we can take the figures with a pinch of salt, really, because they should be reported through to the council and they shouldn't be reported to us. And we should actually be forwarding it onto the council and not necessarily criming it. So we've got 4 instances of fly tipping, which isn't a true reflection of what it is at all. but we are working closely with David Furr from the council. And if he finds anything that's of interest to us, we will go out with him. And equally, if we find anything that we think should be alerted to him, we always flag it up to him. That's it from me. Just open it up to any questions for myself or the inspector.
Thank you very much. Councillor Munster, I think, was first in there. Not quite sure.
I think it was a fraction of a second, but thank you very much, Chair. And can I just thank you both for coming along this evening? I know that members find it incredibly useful, and I know that we're really keen all to increase our cooperation with the police, because our priorities are the same, making sure that our communities remain safe. And I'm really pleased to hear that overall in the southern rural, that actually we're seeing a decrease in crime, and that's a credit to you and your team. So thank you very much for the work that you do. I am concerned to hear that overall crime in Kympton has in fact increased, and I would appreciate a meeting with both of you, if that would be possible, just to discuss the specifics and the police response to that. And hopefully that will help to reassure residents. But I've just got two questions. With this data, what can residents expect to see in Kympton in response to these figures? And the second question is, it's fantastic to have the community engagement that we do. I know that a number of elderly residents in particular attend the coffee mornings with PCSO Burrows and others. But generally they take place, from 10:30 to 12 o'clock. And for those who are working in the city or working, from home, that's not necessarily a fantastic time. And obviously, the opinions of those individuals are just as valuable. So I was just wondering, sort of, what are you going to be doing to try and, encourage engagement from that sort of, group of individuals who aren't able to necessarily attend during the day?
With regards to what we're doing about the crime figures, we're going to try and increase our presence in Kympton as much as we can. We're going to see if there's any reasons and obvious reasons that we can see, then concentrate on those. I know that we're an officer down, so that makes it harder to be able to be proactive. We tend to respond to things more as soon as we get an extra officer, and we've got someone that's going to be helping us cover from a different area, then we'll certainly be trying to be more proactive. And I think you're right in so much as we need to hit people that don't come along to the meetings that we do put on. And the best way of doing that would be to put some on the weekends. The people we want to speak to are the ones that are there during the day a lot of the time, so that we encourage them to report stuff to us. But it's equally as important, the ones that aren't there could well be the ones that are being targeted for some of the crimes in their absence. So we certainly need to reach out to all members of the community to get help from everyone, and to give our best advice that we can to them.
Thank you very much for that. And look, if you need any assistance or anything like that, I remain at your disposal to try and help us to ensure that we get that engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just add? Sorry, can I just add a little bit more with regards to Kympton? Just looking at the data, which you may not have seen, Councillor. Yes, it is the case that Kympton appears to be an outlier, but for some of the metrics, we're talking from a very low number. So an increase from 4 to 6, for example, could be a 50% crime rate increase, but in the context of some of our other rural wards, the numbers are reassuringly low in terms of totality. But yeah, absolutely, we're very happy to meet with you and talk you through the detail of this. I think we have been impacted by our staffing challenges without a doubt, and I think you raise a fair point around engagement. It continues to be a problem for us around we reach out easy to reach communities quite effectively, and that tends to be people in a certain demographic of a certain age as well, where they've got perhaps more time and availability to speak to us. But I know that we continue to miss a trick, particularly around the younger members of the community, and also people that are at work during the day, and are we giving them the mechanism to come and speak to us? So that's an easy issue to solve. We do find and I don't know if this is unique to North Herts, a challenge sometimes to get people to engage with us. And I don't know entirely why that is, but it's been a problem for the 3 years that I've been in this role. The sense seems to be that people will talk to us if they have a particular problem that they wish to raise, but if not, it's almost like a no news is good news. But for me, I think that means we're not lifting the stone as much as we perhaps could do. And it's a work in progress. And I've mentioned this at several council meetings recently, but we take on board your feedback, and that's something we can easily address.
Councillor Frost.
Thank you for your updates. My apologies. I didn't recognise you as we walked in, so I wasn't being rude and ignoring you, but thank you ever so much. I didn't recognise you out of context. It's good to hear that across Hitchwood, Offa and Who we've context. It's good to hear that we've had Hitchwood, Offa and Who decrease. Obviously with fly tipping, you're absolutely right. It should go through the council and not to you guys. Thank you for increasing your visibility across our ward. It's something that actually I've been plugging recently on social media as well for you guys. I know that you've had one of your officers with a speeding gun in Offaly recently. We've increased the signage for speed awareness around that area as well. Other villages are kicking off as well, saying that they would love you to attend. St Hippolyt's along the road to Codicut, Lily as well, particularly. They're two areas that if you are getting a rota together, it would be great to get those put on to there. In terms of fly tipping, I've got to say it's one that I fly the flag for across our ward. We've got real hotspots like Luton Whitehill. I know Dave Fair is still working incredibly hard. I only passed him at the junction with Lily Bottom just the other day. Just out of interest, in the past year, how many fly tips have come to you from Dave for you to follow up? Have you had many leads that have led to prosecutions? Because I think that's the biggest thing that we have to try and defend our officers and say, you know, they do work tirelessly along with yourselves behind the scenes to get these fly tips back to their origins and really try and get some prosecution and, you know, catch the culprits. But we don't really get that feedback as to, after we've reported it, what happens.
Don't have the figures, I'm afraid, of how many we've actually assisted with, but in the main, David will do his own prosecutions or his own tickets, and we will assist with staffing, if you like, to back him up. If he's got to go just across the border into Beds and he's not aware of the address that he's going to, he's not been able to do any research, we will back him up with that in order that, you know, he's not going into the unknown on his own. In the past, we've offered our interview rooms as well when he's needed to come in, so he's in a safe place to have an interview. As far as I'm aware, he's not had to use that offer this year, but he's quite able and capable, as you know, of doing his own investigations, and we're there. And I say to him whenever he comes in, if he needs us, then just call, and he'll have regular meetings. He tends to pop in on Fridays and then run stuff past us. We share intelligence and then sort of work a plan forward. So we do have a very good relationship with him, and we've got some joint operations that Claire Wallace is setting up to go out together so that they can just check if there's anything that we can do with the fly tip hotspots. Or anything that we can do differently, or if there's anyone that we need to go and speak to and show a joined up way of thinking.
Just to put on record our thanks. I know Heather Burrows has been holding a lot of surgeries as well, which have been well attended. And it's just great to keep that dialogue open between you guys and especially the farmers in our area, because they are a big help to us. You know, they're the eyes and ears in between the roads and across the fields, literally. So thank you. And it's showing in the figures that whatever you're doing is paying off.
Councillor Strong.
Yes, I want to talk about nitrous oxide and those horrible little canister things that we seem to be finding everywhere. And is there anything that police can do about it or not? And the reason I'm asking is because I went to a parish council meeting and one of the residents came in with 5 of the big canisters that had just been left in a public space. I think the inference was probably that people had driven there, had a bit of fun, and then driven off again. But it's what is it that we can do, and what are you guys doing? Because it's so harmful for those young people that are doing it. Whether they know it or they don't know it, what the dangers that they're doing. But also wherever they've been, it's antisocial. They're leaving the debris around.
I sit on JAG, and this is a hot topic at the moment. There's several strands to this, really. Firstly, it seems to be young people that tend to do it. So working with North Herts College, we're developing jointly an education campaign around the dangers of nitrous oxide usage, and those dangers don't seem to be particularly well known. It's seen as almost like a safe high. It's not a legal high. It's still an offence to possess it, but there is an issue around the legislation, because it's not covered by the Misuse of Drugs Act. It's actually, if you're in possession of it, I can't name you the exact wording of the offence, but it's to do with possession of medicines or medical equipment that's not permitted legally. So that also is a challenge for us. Our view at JAG is very much this is number 1, education, and number 2, the ASB that arises from it is for the police. Littering, we have discussed the litter that they leave behind. That's been discussed at JAG, and management of litter is not something that's the responsibility of the police. That very much sits with the council responsibility, but we do see that we have a role to play around the ASB that arises from this, and that's why one of our local priorities for Hitchin Rural at the moment is exactly ASB in open spaces. I don't know if it's specifically drug related, but very much it's covered by that umbrella. It's difficult. You need to see a pattern of where they're using it, so that we can actually be out there in the right place at the right time to deal with them. And as I say, legislatively, it's not an easy matter for the police to deal with, because the Misuse of Drugs Act just hasn't kept up with the changing tastes of the people that use this type of drug, for want of a better word. So no, we're very much a priority for JAG at the moment. I don't have the full answer for you yet, and I think there are those different strands that we need to deal with jointly, very much so.
Councillor Frost, did you want to come in on this topic?
Going on from Councillor Strong's point, you're saying about finding where the canisters are used. That may be a good starting point to go to the parish councils, because I know full well, even just attending those, for instance, I'm going to take Great Offaly. The absolute hotspot in Great Offaly is the I don't know the technical term for it, the gates that go into the church underneath that little archway there. 100% that's where they're always found there every time, and on the mug around the back. So maybe whether it's through an email trail or whether, I know you're staffing issues at the moment, but if you can get someone along and maybe do 1 month where you go to the parish councils and say, like, we would like to know where they're used, they'd be able to flag it up for you instantly.
I mean, just going back to the mention of the responsibility for clearing up the items, it doesn't mean we're not interested in where they are, because that shows us where that usage is happening, and we can use that to direct our patrols. We need the intelligence to come in, so any member of the public can submit intelligence, whether through Crime Stoppers. There's many mechanisms for these things to be reported online. I don't know if that's being reported routinely, or we're waiting for meetings where those conversations can be had. We review all the intelligence that comes in every day of the week. And if we're seeing that intelligence footprint developing around, we keep seeing nitrous oxide canisters at that location, we're going to feed that straight into our patrol plan, which gets reviewed on a weekly basis. So it's about responding to it dynamically, but it is driven by information coming in. And again, we had a meeting this week around general levels of intelligence coming from the public does seem to be reducing for North Herts, and I'm not sure what the driver is behind that, because if we don't know about something, we can't respond to it unless, of course, it comes out of meetings like this. But then the danger is you're talking about something that happened 3 weeks ago, or we want that timely information to come in, and anyone, including yourselves, can report that, and that will get back to us, and we will review and respond to it.
Maybe that's something we can support you on when we go to our next parish council meetings. Feed the information back that you're giving us now, and kind of plug it away, a bit like I do with fly tips being reported to the council. we can ask them routinely at the end of the spiel we give them. And
Yeah.
don't forget, if you see anything, please report it.
You may not be aware there's actually a bespoke mechanism for our partners to report intelligence into the police, which I know our JAG members are aware of. You may not be aware of that. I'd be very happy to circulate that
Yeah, please
process
do.
for the information of all councillors, and it's
Would
there
you
to be
happy
used.
for us to then pass that on to our parishes, and then they can circulate it to their
If it's
their
within
council?
that sort of partnership group, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no problem with that at all.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll send
Thank
that
you.
through.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a very useful thing to flow down to parish councils and indeed any other local groups that run a lot of litter picks, because they're the ones clearing this stuff up. Councillor Tandy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for that presentation, very comprehensive. So it's great to see that crimes decreased in Nebworth. I'm the councillor for Nebworth. But I note with the residential burglaries, there is an increase, which is one area, I suppose. I wonder what kind of, you spoke about education and training. What kind of educational training are we providing to the community in order to reduce this, particularly if we're saying it's coming from domestic violence or maybe internal home issues? So for the residential burglaries, and also training for fly tipping. We've got problems with fly tipping in Nebworth. I don't know if you know Stevenage Road. It's one of the roads where we constantly get that. But yes, I think you mentioned education and training. I thought what you're providing to, and this is really to the community in those areas. Thank you.
What we do, with regards to the domestic related burglaries, it's a very different issue. People may still have keys to the premises, but they're just not meant to have access. And that's down to our domestic violence units that will do the initial work. If we get any repeat domestic violence victims, that will come to us as a team, and we will go and support the person, the victim, and see if there's anything else that we can do. With regards to regular residential burglaries, then the advice will be based on how the house looks. Now, if they've got different locks that can be replaced, or the lighting, the doorbell cameras or CCTV, anything that's going to be an obvious deterrent, that may be more than a typical house like that in the same street. If you've got some sort of a deterrent, it's going to make you less likely to be victim to a burglary. Every year we do the Operation Guardian, which is based around burglaries, and we had the Beat the Burglar campaign. So it's the same advice: have a light in the house and a timer switch, and make that come on at various points so it looks like there's someone there, because quite often it's very obvious if a house is empty and there's no one there, there's no car on the drive, and the house is in darkness. It's quite obvious there's no one there. So a simple timer switch and a lights in the house can stop it looking empty, not leaving valuables on show. So it's education like that, along the lines of just some simple things. A timer switch is less than £5, and it only has to flick on and off a few times. It only has to be a little lamp that's put on. I know people will be concerned with the cost of electricity, but it only needs to be a little lamp that comes on in a room somewhere, and that light will show from outside. It's enough to deter someone, as long as it's on a random timer and it's not always at the same time that someone might get used to. If you're going away, don't leave milk bottles on the doorstep. I know not that many people have milkmen anymore, do they? But it's just little things. Make sure that the house looks like there's someone in it. If you've got a side alley gate, don't leave the bins pushed up against it, because people can just use those to jump over into the back garden. So we will assess the properties and the people as we get there, and then see if there's any sort of quick wins, and if we've got anything that we can give out as a freebie that will help, then we'll do that as well. Has that
Just-
answered your question?
Can I could probably add a couple more points. I think it's important to talk about OWL, the OWL network. So that we are rapidly going up the charts as a CSP, and I've set a target for my entire team for us to be considerably beyond a third of all addresses in the CSP to be signed up by the end of this year. And we were at a very low level when I joined a few years ago. So we've made great progress, but there's more progress to be done. And the reason OWL is so important is every time a residential burglary occurs, we send out an OWL message to every single member of OWL, firstly to make them aware of the fact that a burglary has taken place in their residence, but also providing crime prevention advice as well. So if you're signed up to that, you're going to be getting that regularly whenever that burglary takes place. And I think that's a very useful tactic. Also, we run regular crime prevention roadshows. We have a designated crime prevention officer for North Herts who will come out regularly with our PCs and PCSOs, and they'll set up stalls. If we see an emerging hotspot, we will focus on that and have that presence in that locality so the public can come and talk to us, and we can offer free crime prevention kit as well. So that's happening in person, but I do think OWL is a really important channel that needs to be utilized, and we were not great a few years ago. We're getting a lot better, but there is room for more improvement. That's what I'm really driving on this year. But every single burglary gets that follow-up transmission to every single member of OWL, so it's a constant reminder of here are the basic crime prevention steps that you can take to keep your address safe, because there has been a burglary, and that is really unsettling for people. Just one more thing about the data. I think we do always have to tread a little bit carefully. So you've talked about burglaries. That a fairly significant element of these are domestic related. So it's very concerning to the individual victim, but it doesn't imply there's someone prowling around breaking into houses. And we are hamstrung sometimes by how we can present our data. Another example is we get historic reports, for example, of sexual offences that come in sometimes. And if someone goes onto the Police UK website and they want to look at how many sexual offences were reported last month, for example, Police UK will show you that 30 offences were reported, for example, but it might be that 15 of those might be 10, 15 years ago, and there's no way that we can quantify that. And it's the same with the burglaries. So I am concerned sometimes you can almost have too much data without any context to it. There's a risk of alarming the public. And it's something that I'm trying to work on with the people that plug into the Police UK website, because I know the public look at that in quite a lot of number now, and it's about managing their concerns, because sometimes actually it doesn't quite, the reality is a little bit different when you do your deep dive into that data. Okay. That was about the education, wasn't it? So I suppose what would you be thinking of? Because I would expect any member of the public, is it about identifying it, or is it about trying to deter people from doing it? What is it you're thinking? Right. Okay. Obviously, we don't have the lead for the management of fly tipping. That sits with North Herts Council. We obviously work alongside them regularly and do these joint operations like what you mentioned. I'd probably have to have a conversation with you outside of around perhaps what you're thinking, or more around education in terms of deterring it. This links again a lot to travelling criminality. We have particular problems near the Luton borders, but I appreciate your Nebworth, so maybe not quite such an impact. I don't know how we would be able to educate people that are considering doing fly tipping, unless we're thinking about perhaps an individual who might be doing it as a one-off, perhaps. And we do take part in comms campaigns with Dave and John sometimes on social media, just reminding the public of the dangers of getting a criminal record if they're caught doing it. But perhaps that's an area we need to look at more for 2023. So I'm happy perhaps to have a conversation with you outside of this. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Munson.
Thank you. Just one last question, and it's about sort of engagement with our farmers. We are by nature a rural area, and unfortunately, when you look at offences such as fly tipping or hare coursing, for example, unfortunately farmers tend to bear the brunt of that. And I was just wondering, sort of, what engagement are you doing to target that and to make sure that their voices are heard? And I was just wondering, I note in East Herts, and I think in Royston the other day, there was a barn meet. And I was just wondering whether or not that's something which is on the agenda for Southern Rural.
Yeah, it's definitely on the agenda for us to do another barn meet. We are overdue one, so we're hoping to fit one in this year. We were waiting until we had a full complement of staff back, because I know that Claire Wallace was off to start with, then she came back, and then Gary went off, and then we got Justin. Now Justin's off. We were hoping to have a full complement of staff, and then we would have a barn meet so that everyone could meet the whole team. If that's not going to be available, then we'll certainly do something sooner. Stuart was hopefully going to be liaising with the Royston team to find out all of the people that they invited, because I think that went down very well. You were there, weren't you? And so he'll be trying to mirror that for us over here, and it's likely to be in Codicott, I would have thought, because that's quite a good place where we've got people that will happily have the venue.
Yeah, just to say that that was a really superb event, and I had conversations with the Royston Sergeant saying we need to replicate this on the other side of the CSP. So we're happily way ahead of you, and it is going to be planned. It was really good opportunity to see the NFU again. To have really excellent relationships with them, and of course they bring in certain key members from the farming community, and certainly, you know, till now that relationship is very, very positive. But as with anything, it can always be better, and we can always be doing more for that particular community. And I think absolutely it was a great success, and we need to replicate that. So that is going to happen this year.
Okay, thank you. I did have one brief question myself. You mentioned the budget in Great Ashby has seen a rise in reports, and I think you mentioned that it may or may not be that actually it's just a rise in the reporting in that area. So I happen to be aware that the community council in that area have relatively recently put in a CCTV installation in the Budgeons car park, and I wondered if that could relate to the increased reporting, or if it is direct reporting from people phoning you, then I hope it helps.
I'll certainly check with Stuart. He deals with most of the shopliftings from Budgeons, and I know he's always collecting CCTV and putting out ID sort for other officers. So I'll check with him, but it can only help, can't it?
Indeed, I hope it is both being used and helpful. If there are no other questions, in which case I will thank you both very much for a very interesting discussion. And I will move on to item 6, which is public participation, though I'm going to start by inviting the Community Engagement Officer to update members on the budget situation.
Thank you, Chair. The 2022 to 2023 base budget was £8,700, with £222 carried forward from the 2021 to 22 budget. Grants awarded to date total £3,306, which leaves a budget available of £5,616. The grant applications for this meeting total £3,985, and if the members agree the grants outlined in this report, this will leave a balance of £1,631 to carry forward into the 2023 to 2024 budget.
Thank you. So just to explain what I'm going to do now, as there is no budget conflict between the two grants, and as this is our last meeting of the year, so this budget will just be carried forward, I was going to propose that we take each grant in its entirety, first hearing the presentation and then a combined discussion and any questions, and then deciding the grant before moving on to the second. Okay. In which case, I will invite our first applicants, Kirsty and Tieran, to present.
Good evening, I'm Kirsty Badham. I'm the head teacher at Reachwood Green JMI School, and this is Tiernan. He's one of our Year 6 pupils who has come to support me tonight for a little bit of confidence. So a little bit about us as a school. We're a small rural school. We've got just 83 pupils. Currently, we have no grass area in our school because we're so small. So we have to use the village recreational ground for our PE lessons. It's been fine using that over the years, but the difficulty we now have is to go across to the village recreational ground for safeguarding. We have to have at least 2 members of staff, and with tightening budgets in school, that's becoming much more challenging for us. It also means we can't just ad hoc go across and play anything if we want to, which does sort of stint being responsive to the children at times. It also means that all of our activities on the playground, so when the boys or the girls want to play football, they have to do it on the playground. And again, they're a bit more cautious, aren't they? Less adventurous, more cautious, and that's even in PE lessons. So it does kind of stint their skills a little bit. And football at playtimes on the playground, isn't it? And you're going to talk about that?
Yeah. So Miss Badham regularly asks us, what do you feel about how do you feel nervous or safe in our school? The only complaints are usually about the playground and the concrete, as they are scared that they'll get hit by the ball or get hurt by playing football. So if we got this 4G AstroTurf pitch, it'd be a big boost for all of us and all of us that want to play football, because people that don't want to play football can feel safe on the playground now, doing what they want to do. And people who want to play football can also be free really playing it, because they don't have to worry about being hurt, as there's a cage that the ball can't really escape. So by having the pitch, really, it will be a big boost for our whole school.
So what we're asking for is we're asking for a £2,000 grant towards our new artificial grass area, which will be a designated area where it's going to have fencing around it, which will mean that the other children who don't want to play ball sports, not just football, but any football sports, can be safely without worrying about the ball hitting them. We have raised money. The total project is let me just look, 24,285. We have put it out there to local businesses and things, and we've been very fortunate in that we've managed to raise £20,000 from 2 local businesses. As a school, we've raised money through our school Christmas performances and through raffle tickets and things, which we raised 1,650. If we were to receive a £2,000 grant, it would leave us with just £635 left to raise. We're very confident we've managed to do, wouldn't we? And the benefits for the children are that when I say, is there anywhere in school you don't feel safe, hopefully it will turn around to a no, because everybody's happy on the playground, and that's the only issue we have at the moment. And education will improve because teachers can ad hocly take the children out to do sports without the children worrying about falling over and hurting themselves on the playground.
Oh, thank you very much. May I just ask first a question of my own? Could you clarify the amounts? The report I have in front of me suggested it was 2,485.
So the spectator fencing that we were asking for the report for the grant for is 2,485, but I understood we could only ask for 2,000, so I was asking for 2,000. If we can have the 2,485, we would very much appreciate that.
Sorry, yes, so there might have been a misunderstanding. Yeah, we have it down as £2,485 requested.
Okay, splendid. So if there are any questions for the speakers or anyone would like to make a proposal, Councillor Munter.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And young man, can I just say, well done. It's a very, very intimidating experience coming here and sort of speaking in public in front of all of us. And you put your argument so eloquently. So really well done. And I must say I'm sold. So I'm more than happy to propose this. I think it's so important for our young people and our young children's cognitive development in particular. We really need to be encouraging, young people to get out and about, to, go and be fit. So I really hope that this money is going to help towards that goal. And all I would say on sort of the alternative funding as well. Have a look at your county councillor, try and get in touch for the locality budget, possibly a parish council grant, and there are other grants available, Sports England, maybe something like that. But it's not that much money in the grand scheme of things, and I'm sure you're going to have no issues with making that up. But young man, very well done.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Strong, did you want to come in on that one?
Well, I was going to just propose that the recommendation, since it sat in Hitchwood, Offren Who, it's part of my ward. Thank you very much. But yes, I think it's we don't get such awards for such a large amount very often, and you're actually quite lucky that we have got money in our budget left. But I do see that this is like a long-term project, so once it's done, it's done. So we won't be seeing you again. So I'm very happy to propose the amount that is in the report and not what you asked for. So the 2,485.
Splendid. I feel I may have heard two proposals there. Yours specifically.
Well, I need somebody to second.
Yours specifically of the amount in the report. Councillor Munson, would you be happy to second the proposal for the full amount in the report, just to clarify that ambiguity there?
I would be more than happy, and as Councillor Strong is the ward councillor, I'd be more than happy to support her in that.
All right, excellent stuff. Councillor Frost.
Well, I fear I'm going to repeat what's already been said. I was going to propose it because it also sits in my ward as well. And I actually am a secretary to a PSA of a school very close to you that has even less children than you. First of all, well done. At your age, I don't think I could have come and spoken in front of all these people. You've done really, really well. You should be proud. It's so hard these days. We're struggling to raise money at our own school. So any funding, I've just, funnily enough, text our PSA saying, this is a great idea. This is a really good initiative. I'm pleased that you've come to us. This is where our money should be going, into grassroots, into schools, to helping them, because the funding for schools is dropping. So many schools are actually in the negative now, and to try and find money and to ask parents to keep giving for mufti days and school discos, it's difficult. It's really difficult. Are we allowed to still call them mufti days? Yeah.
I haven't heard it from.
Sorry, I'm showing my age now. Non-uniform days. Roll down, yeah. But no, I'm really pleased to see the money being spent in this way, and you have my wholehearted support.
Thank you, Councillor Moody.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for your speech. Very, very well done. Just want to ask one question around the football pitch or the pitch. What size are you going for? Because I've done adult sized football pitches. I've done the whole stadium development, and £2,485 is probably not going to get you very much. Is it a 5-a-side pitch or a 7?
In all honesty, I can't tell you the size in that respect, because it fits the land that we have spare. So it's just a case of taking the sports activities away from the playground and doing it there. So it's not. I don't think it's even as big as a 5-by-5 pitch. I'm not sure. We're having 45 meters of mesh metal fencing around it, if that gives you an idea. So it's a very small area, but for us it's going to make a massive difference to us as a school. And we have a company called Think Sport that come in the holidays to do holiday clubs, so it supports the local community as well, because they're children that aren't just from our school, they're from local schools as well, and it means that it opens up more land for them to be able to use safely as well.
Final question. You said you wanted 2,600 for the whole project. You're only asking for 2,000. Then we've established it. What is the actual funding for the whole project?
So the whole project in total is 24,285.
Yeah. And what are you short at the moment?
We are short.
Are you coming here asking for 2,485?
Yes.
Is that what you're totally short to complete the whole project?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I am.
I don't know is the honest answer to that. We were going to need. Yes, no, we need. So what's the difference, Tiernan? You do the maths between that 485 and 630. I'm going to put Tiernan on the spot here to do the maths. We think £150 we're still short.
Well, do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it. Should we just up it with 150?
Thank you. And can I?
Can I propose that we increase it by 150, please?
You amended my proposal, in other words.
Yeah, can I amend her proposal?
I will
We're
accept-
arguing to give you money.
Right. This is I'm.
Sorry, I've been trying to get you the whole money now.
Oh, I'll try and have at least some of the conversation through the chair. As I understand it, there's been a suggestion that we in fact award the entire amount, not just the amount in the report, the extra 150 that would still be short. There's been a suggestion of an amendment, and the proposer has accepted that amendment. So my understanding is that if the seconder of the proposal also accepts that amendment, then we would in fact be proposing to award the full amount, including the extra 150.
Well, as the seconder of the proposal, I'm more than happy to accept that amendment as well.
Okay. In which case, unless there are any further questions, I will suggest we. Are you waving to move to the vote or further questions? Right. Okay. Unless there are any further questions, I will suggest we move to the vote on the proposal as amended to award the amount 2,635.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much and congratulations.
You said he's brave and did well coming up, and we didn't look at this together until 23 today. So he's been really put on the spot today, haven't you? I know, yeah, that's it. Well done. We'll use you more often. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. I'll move on to our second public speaker, Steve Christopher. Good evening. Whenever you're ready. I think it's the other microphone we need.
I've chosen the wrong one, have I? I'd just like to say, I think I've got an impossible act to follow there. Right. Thank you very much for agreeing to consider our application for a grant and to hear me explain the background to it. I'm Steve Christopher. I'm a trustee of Kimpton Folk Events. I became involved with the Kimpton Folk Festival last year, which was the first year back after COVID. And I just actually moved into the area, and I was absolutely amazed by the quality and the standard of the event that was being put on in such a small village as Kimpton. This grew out of the passion of local musicians who frequented folk festivals around the country and thought, well, why can't we put a folk festival on? And as a result of that, they got together and they formed Kimpton Folk Events. It became a registered charity in 2015. And it is run entirely by volunteers. At the moment, there are 5 trustees, of which I'm one. The key objective is to advance, improve, develop and maintain public education and appreciation of music, brackets, and in particular folk music, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it is really saying, we are looking to encourage people to enjoy live music, in the locality. And we do this principally through the folk festival. There are other events we get involved in, and we're putting on small concerts during the course of the year, and we ensure that there's folk sessions in the local pub that take place a couple of times a month. And in the past, although it was stopped by COVID, people have gone into schools and assisted there. So it developed, it's now in its 6th year, because we had 2 years when we were out because of COVID, and it's become a very successful festival. The aim at the outset was to reach beyond the people who already are folk enthusiasts, and yes, there are quite a few of us, but I'm not sure if there's any here. It's our love of folk music, but it's also to make it into a really community event, because those of you who know Kimpton, it is a village that it punches above its weight in virtually everything it does, as far as I can see. And this has fitted into the character of the other events that are being put on in the village. So we aim to make it a community event, and it's structured so that it takes place around the village. So now locals actually talk about it as part of village life. As outlined in the committee report that you've seen, it's got there's 2 parts to the folk festival. There's the traditional folk festival, which is ticketed events, where we got folk performers are coming from all around the country, and we get people who are particularly interested in folk music will come from far afield to attend that. That's attracting a very wide audience. That is self-financing. That was the aim at the start, that would pay for itself, and it isn't it isn't to be a burden on the community. But then the second part, which is actually quite unique, I think, among folk festivals, because quite a few of them are actually run as commercial events. We're running the other part of it as a community event, and offering free music and activities for anyone that turns up. So the main hub of that is on the village green, and on the adjacent garden fields. On the village green, we have a performance stage, which is just mic'd up like any of the other stages that we're using. And we've got a range of concessions, including food and craft stalls. And the entertainment is a mix of local musicians and some of the people from the ticketed concerts who come and play for the general public as well. And we have local musicians, other people like the village choir. The school choir is also going to perform this year. We have Morris a dancing side, which is of great interest to people who haven't seen Morris dancing before. And we also have a children's dance group who will be performing in front of the stage. So it's quite a variety of music and song. In the garden fields area, we specifically focus on families, and the activities there include sing-along sessions, craft workshops. We've got storytellers both for children and for adults, and a conjurer who comes along. So that's going to happen again this year. The other activities are centred on the Boot Public House, which has got an open mic for aspiring musicians who want to give it some air, and also traditional music sessions, which will go on until about 11 in the evening, or perhaps a bit later than that. And we also have a number of what we call busker stops, and that's where our buskers perform all the way around the village, and they're there to entertain people as they're going between one event and another, and that's been very popular. I actually did it myself last year. It was quite an interesting experience. You get a lot of comments, some of them favourable. How we spend the money, let's say our application is in relation to the free element of the festival. The festival, that element of the budget has been estimated this year at just under 7,500. The 2 biggest areas of cost are the performers, that's the musicians, the dancers, the entertainers on the garden fields and the green, and the setup of the venues, because at the green we have a large marquee which has a stage on it, and then when you've got a stage, you've got to pay for all of the sound equipment, the sound engineer. And in the background, you've got all the costs that you don't think about. Well, I've had to think quite a lot about them recently. You know, the insurance and marketing, providing toilets, straw bales for the people that forgot to bring seats along, the signage for the event. So there's an awful lot of cost there that if you don't budget it at the start, it can come back to kick you later. Now, over the years, we have funded the vast majority of that through our own activities, either our own fundraising and the pitch rentals, the advertisements that we do. I've got some examples here. There's only a few left of our free program that we issued last year to everybody who turned up. The car parking is also free to make sure that we get people up into the field at the back of the village. And this outlines all the people who are attending. It's got a map of the village, so you can find your way around it if you want to. But the problem this year is that, and we found it last year, post-COVID, it's not been as easy to do our own fundraising in the same way as we had in the past. Things are getting better now, but we'd had quite a few significant events that we put on which have provided funding for the folk festival. We have had one we've been involved in. There was an American rock concert in the village a few weeks ago, which was brilliantly attended. Actually, over 200 people came into the memorial hall for that one. Which a bit of money came towards the folk festival on that. And we also put on some with with the folk artists from around the country, but we haven't been able to do that to the same extent as we would have liked to do this year. Our feeling is that as the situation is improving, this is not going to be the problem in the future. If it is, then we may have a problem, but that's one that we're trying to address. And we're looking at other things like sponsorship and the things we can do to actually generate our own money. But in the short term, we do need the support of organisations such as yourself to be able to stage the event that people in the village have actually come to know and come to love. Just briefly, it fits in with your own objectives, and the two in particular, the people first side. It brings people together right across the community. In addition to the trustees, there's our organising committee is 10 to 12 people. There's about 60 volunteers that come and get involved on the day in various capacities. There's all the participants, the choirs, the musicians on stage, the buskers, the people running the events. And we're anticipating, if it's anything like last year, about 1,000 people will come into the village during the course of the day. They're not there all of the time, but that is a boost to local businesses. Certainly the village pub does quite well out of the event, and the shop. And we also provide the other small businesses the opportunity to promote their services in the food and the craft stalls that we have on site. And it's supporting and enhancing our cultural heritage is the way that we would we describe it, because it's bringing a greater awareness of folk music and dancing and craft. But it's not just the folk singers; it's the other things that actually go around it. That's part of our tradition. And in terms of a brighter future together, it brings people together from diverse backgrounds. It has got people out into the village. There were a lot of people who weren't going out much after COVID, and we saw people out there last year who've been keeping themselves very much to themselves over the for some time. So it's got people of all ages involved. And making the activities free, it's actively supporting disadvantaged people in the community, because you haven't got to pay. You can come and sit on the village green, pick up a straw bale, sit on the straw bale, and you've got a whole afternoon's entertainment. And it finishes with a cadie that anyone can get involved in as well. So the continuation of the folk festival post-COVID was actually in response to wishes of the local residents, as well as ourselves, I must say, and reflects the value that's now placed on the festival and associated events as an integral part of the cultural fabric of the village. And as I said at the start, putting on a folk festival in a village the size of Kimpton is punching well above our weight. So with your help, we can continue to do so. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for the comprehensive report. One thing before I opened it up to questions that I was going to clarify is I believe that at this time, this grant award, if we were minded to make it, would have to be contingent on a adequate safeguarding policy being signed off. Now, my understanding is that has now been received, but hasn't been fully reviewed at this time, though if the committee is minded to award the grant, then that shouldn't stop us. Yeah.
If I could just say on that, I was directed towards Andy Baser of North Herts CBS, and Andy has been extremely helpful in helping us to update our policy, which was very much based on children in the past, but obviously we recognise that there's a lot more to it. So it's taken a little longer than we'd have hoped to get it finished, but Amy's been extremely helpful on supporting us on that.
Okay, Councillor Munson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think in North Herts and in Southern Rural in particular, we are certainly punching well above our weight because, you know, we've got Nebworth House, which I believe is the home of British pop and rock, I'm told. But in Kimpton as well, we've got some absolutely fantastic community events which occur all through the year, whether it be the Folk Festival, whether it be the May Festival, the Christmas Market, and so many others. And it's such a fantastic opportunity for the community to come together, but also for those outside of Kimpton to come into the village and to support those local businesses and to, you know, really get a better understanding of what the village and what the community is all about. And I think you're very right when you point out the impact of COVID, because COVID has a massive impact on a whole variety of different community organisations, and we see that at this panel and indeed across the district as well. It's really good to hear that we're going to be looking to sort of come and find other avenues of funding for next year. And hopefully this is going to be a stopgap to ensure that, you know, that the Folk Festival is able to carry on in its current form. So I know my colleagues will be very, very pleased to hear that. And just on the remaining funding, I know you're probably already aware, but I would encourage you to go and see if you can get a locality grant from Councillor Richard Thake and the Parish Council as well. But that's all I have to say. I would be more than happy to propose this, and I look forward to attending the festival.
Thank you very much. Councillor Frost.
Am I okay to ask a question? Or are we in debate now?
You can ask a question, certainly.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was really thorough. And actually, I only live up and over the hill and a little bit along. So you never know. I may come and join you if you're that unlucky. I can see from our paperwork that you've had previous support in 2019. Have you ever put in any other applications that maybe weren't successful in the interim between 2019 and now?
We actually put in an application last year, but we were too late. And I'd just like to thank Amy again on that one, because she did get, I think it was Amy, or it may not have been. Anyway, somebody from the team actually contacted us just before Christmas to say, are you aware that our deadline is such and such? So we have made, because your applications being in this current financial year, it's a bit different from some of the other organisations. You know, so we were determined to get an application in this time round.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Strong.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit confused. Did you say you ran it last year then? Was it run last year?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, have we seen the balance sheets and the budget and everything else for this event from last year? I mean, was there not anything You know, if you ran it, did you not make any profit out of the event?
We aim to get to keep our reserves at around 50% of the cost of the festival, and that's the position we were in. In fact, we did send in the charity return that was completed at October last year.
So as an organisation, you have some reserves then?
Yes, we do have reserves. I think
So-
it'd be imprudent not to.
And so that's not shown in the financial information that we have. That
It was information provided.
yeah, it's not in the report
Yeah,
that we've
so-
had
sorry,
on
no.
you. That's I mean, I'm interested to know what sort of profit that you made from the festival last year that we went maybe. I mean,
wasn't-
obviously,
sorry.
2019 would have been probably was the year before COVID.
Yeah.
So I assume that was a good year. I mean, were you provided that sort of information, Amy?
Yes, sorry, I'm just having a look through. So yes, we did receive
Yeah.
accounts.
It was a very funny year because we had a number of artists that we paid some money up front from 2020, and we didn't ask for the money back. So we actually had some that we had prepaid part of it. So all the accounts were very confusing. But last year's one, in terms of the full side, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but it's about 9,000 for the costs of the ticketed part of the festival. You should have the form there, I think, with the...
Yes, I've got the accounts. So it's the team kind of, we all review it together. So I'm just kind of having a look.
I mean, my sort of question is, if it's a fundraising event and it's making a reasonable amount of money, then I would have thought that would have been used to fund the free part of the festival, because it would all be part of the what of what your event and your structure and what your committee would be doing. You'd be saying, oh, well, this part is going to be funding, and if it's making profit, I'd have thought that would have then been the part that would have been able to fund a free part that would be open for the community. I mean, as an organisation, you've obviously been to us before, and we have given you grant. And often when we're doing stuff, it's on a like a seed fund to help an organisation get started, and then they run. And that's why, knowing that you've got some hefty reserves, and it's not as though if we didn't give this, you're going to look for other funding streams. The event's still going to go ahead, whether we grant money to you tonight or not.
Objective, we agreed as an organisation that it was prudent to keep 50% of our overall costs of running the festival as a reserve, because there's so many things can go wrong, especially in terms of people coming into the village. If we had a bad day in terms of rain or whatever it happened to be, we won't get anybody turn up to any of the outside events. In terms of the ticketed event, it doesn't make a profit, it breaks even. And in terms of what we can, in working out what we can sell the tickets for, that helps us to actually decide what we can offer to, the artists that are performing. So the intention there is that it is literally, that's even each year.
Okay. Councillor Frost, did you want to come back in?
It could be me and my maths or lack of maths skills here. But following on from what Councillor Strong said, just doing my maths, from the figures that we've got here, does it show that any of the money from the previous concerts or the previous festivals are going to be put into this? Because I can't see that.
If we don't get any grant funding, that is one of the options we can do, because we are actually asking for quite a lot of grant funding from various bodies this year, because it's so difficult in terms of we have to make we have to somehow generate £4,500, which on a normal year we'd be looking to make for grant funding of around 1,000. That's why it's so different. So we could take it out, and that would bring our reserves right down. And I don't, honestly, as if I wear my old hat before I retired as an auditor, I wouldn't actually recommend actually running your reserves down to virtually nothing. And that's the risk we would have if we started doing that.
Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah. From last year's profit, how much of the money raised last year is being put into the running of this year's festival?
Sorry, when you talk about last year's profit, our reserve level stayed roughly the same from the previous year.
So if I understand it, none of the money that was made last year will be put into this year's, you're basically,
not as it stands.
You're starting again and you're going out to raise the money through charity buckets and program ads and stall concessions and grant funding.
That's right.
So none of the money that came from last year's festival, that's staying in your reserve.
That stays in the reserve.
And you're just basically starting from the bottom line again and getting the money to run the festival again this year.
Because the whole festival broke even last year. So therefore
Right.
we are, yeah. So we're keeping our reserves at the same level.
Okay.
Yeah, just sorry, Chairman, through you. Just coming back on the finances on this. So last year was that the first year that you ran the festival after COVID?
That's correct. Yeah.
So what was the financials of last year versus 2019? I suppose is what I'm interested to know. How much money, as a folk event, how much did that raise, and perhaps how much profit was made on that year, which was 2019, as I remember, was quite a good year. Last year was a pretty good year for us. We had a summer's go. We didn't have much rain. Do you have those figures?
I don't have them with me, but there was no real difference between the 2 years.
What I'm looking at says starts from 2021 to 2022. So I don't know if we've got.
Yeah, because that's the charity figures. Yeah.
That's what we've got.
Gave in 2019, which was £390. Was that anything for anything specific? Was that for the programs or something? I can't remember back. I'm not very good at that.
That was the only details I have. So I wasn't here then, but I just saw that.
I was, and I can't remember.
Okay. It could be that it was just a contribution to it generally, maybe. I don't know.
Councillor Strong, shall I come back to you?
Oh, sorry, are you waiting for me? No,
sorry, I thought you were thinking and about to burst into life there.
I mean, for me, this is a bit of an unusual, because normally we don't, we go in, if we were helping out, if you had no funding at all, and this was going to be the first year and you needed to get started, and, we would help you on your way normally on the basis that it would then, you'd be managing it, working. We wouldn't expect it to be something we'd be funding year on year on year. And that kind of with the fact that obviously you've got costs, and you're going to be selling tickets, but I don't see in these numbers here is exactly from, it says fundraising concerts. What are the ticket sales again that you're expecting to get? How many tickets do you expect to sell at the event?
Sorry. The cost of the ticketed concerts and the ticket sales are expected to break even at about 9,500. So our total costs of putting on the overall event, including the free part of it, would be just over 17,000.
Yeah, you see, this is what I'm struggling with. I don't feel I've got a full financial picture of this particular event, of what's going to whom and where. What we've got down as a breakdown. It's only one part of what's happening.
Yeah, well, it's sort of in a sense that we don't intend to make any, we don't aim to make any profit on the ticketed side. It is intended to break even, but it will cover its costs. That's what we're trying to do. So from that point of view, the costs of putting on that event, it's not a profit-making exercise itself. So if we are getting performers in, the costs of the performers is going to come to around the 9,500. So we are aiming to sell tickets that will get us up to that. The way we do it is that we have early bird tickets that are, are a lot cheaper than later on. If we need to make more money to get us up to the same, up to the figure we need to break even, we can increase the cost of the tickets later on. And that's the way that part of it works. So all we've talked about in terms of the application is, the second part of the concert, the second part of the event, which is treated almost as a separate event in terms of its costs.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here, I think we may have confused the committee slightly with the ticketed and the unticketed and the free side of the event. What my mental model is of this at the moment is that there is a free side of the event funded by fundraising such as this grant. There is also a ticketed side of the event that breaks even. This was run pre-COVID, and we gave a small grant in 2019, though it doesn't feel like it, but that is 4 years ago at this point. And the event restarted last year, during which time you found that fundraising was being more difficult than prior to COVID, and the paid for part of the event broke even. I feel if we have and that you have some reserves and they are there to cover your costs in the event that something happens preventing ticket sales from breaking even for that part of the event.
Those reserves, yes. I mean, we don't treat it as two separate, other than the budgeting side, where we would look at the cost of putting on the ticketed event and the tickets. In terms of our overall operation, we are one organisation, and so the overall costs of the Kimpton Folk Festival is about 17,000, and our reserves are about half of that, which is exactly what we're aiming to do.
And yes, it's probably worth noting that if the total cost is 17,000, the amount requested is actually quite a small proportion of that total cost, less than 10%.
I didn't think there was anything more we should ask for anything more than that from an individual organisation.
Okay. That being the case, and I think my understanding was as you said there, then I am going to second Councillor Muntz's proposal, because I'm aware that hasn't yet happened. I do, however, feel that there is a feeling with the committee that this should be more of a grant to get things up and running again after COVID, and that there probably isn't an expectation that it could be a sort of standing funding annually.
No, that's exactly the way we're looking at it. We don't want to come back cap in hand, as it were, from one year to the next.
Okay, splendid. Thank you for indulging me there. Councillor Frost, did you want to come in?
Thank you for clearing that up. I've got to say, the way that you put it was a lot clearer. I've listened to the discussion with interest. What concerns me is that, as Councillor Strong said, we tend to give money as a startup. When they're starting, we put funds into it because they've got nothing there. They're starting from the bottom. We've been told tonight that the ticket sales on the selling side of this will break even. I haven't heard anything that has made me believe that this will be a self-sufficient festival going forward. They're going to break even every year, so they're going to have to go for grants every year. It doesn't sit comfortably with me. I'm sorry. At this moment in time, I need persuading.
As I said, I'm in a slightly difficult position because I only came in post-COVID. But we put on a significant number of other events in previous years, which has been our own fundraising side of things. We actually have a patron, Nancy Kerr and James Fagan, who are an act who come to each year's concerts. They recorded one of their albums in the village church, and half the proceeds from that actually came towards us. So we've done a number of things like that in the past that we've not been able to do, this year. We are intending to put on several more of the concerts, like getting involved with the rock one, that because we're not only involved. We don't just like folk music. We'll do anything to actually promote live music. So as I said at the start, we expect to be in a position where we're not going to come back and asking for any grant funding in the future. Our aim is that we will do it through getting money through our own devices. But having said that, I mean, this is also what we can't be seen to do is to have the ticket holders, the people buying tickets, funding the other half of the event if they're not attending it. So that's why we have split those two things up in that particular sense.
Am I right in thinking that the reason you haven't been able to run those other events that would in other years have provided some funding towards this is because we're still recovering from the COVID situation?
It's been difficult with a lot of the artists in terms of committing themselves ahead, to actually go there. Because if we, we have to. It's not an exact science when you're trying to book people. You have to be able to negotiate quite a lot. And it's been very difficult at this stage because people are taking, aren't prepared to do the kind of deals that they would have done in the past.
Okay, well, I think we can appreciate that there is still some residual disruption from COVID, especially in this industry, and that hopefully that will resolve itself. Councillor Strong, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with these numbers. So that the total cost of, I think we've heard, for the overall event is 17,000, of which 9,500 is spent on the ticketed events, and that's then leaving 7,450 for the charity. Is that right? Did I get that right? Yes, the total project cost is 7,450 to provide free entertainment at the folk festival. So it's a 2-day folk festival, is it? It's a 1-day folk festival.
Yes, and the charity is doing everything. I mean, it is just our event.
Yeah, I don't think I feel I've got enough information that's going to be able to help me to make a decision on this. So I don't know if it's my problem because I'm not seeing it, or I haven't just haven't got the project brief or understanding of what this festival is. I remember before when we heard about it, and I think that was the first and only time we put money into it. It was sort of something specific. But I do believe that when we were talking about it, it was something that we would help, because we effectively it was getting it going, and then that was, but that was kind of the criteria for it. I mean, it says in the report that you've still got 3,000 to raise. I mean, it could be that you can go out there and raise another 4 or 5, from wherever areas you go to, and that, looking for a funding from Southern Rural. As I said, I'm just not convinced that this is, that the project, that it's, well, that how your financials for this particular are coming, have come together, and particularly when we know you've got a fair amount of reserves, which would be, I assume that you take out insurance and everything else, so that if it doesn't, if it rains or something happens to the event, that and it's a complete washout, that you're not going to be completely without some insurance for the day.
So I don't know the detail, but I would assume there is some compensation.
Amy, do you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have the minutes from 2019. It would be helpful for me to read them out on it. So it says it was felt by some councillors that the application could not be justified purely to reduce the cost of the ticket prices, as income generated should be able to cover costs and make a surplus event if it meant charging for some of the activities on the day. It was proposed by Councillor Tyler and seconded by Councillor Nash to offer £1,000, which on being put to the vote was lost. Councillor Henry stated the activities would not be free as the grant funding was paid for by council taxpayers. Subsequently, Councillor Bishop allocated his ward member budget to Kimpton Folk Festival.
That's okay, that explains the amount.
Okay, Councillor Muncer.
Thank you. Stephen, I really want you to be able to walk away with a sum this evening, which is going to contribute to the Folk Festival. I think we look at the previous months, the previous funding from 2019, that was £390. Then we look at the Southern Rural Budget, which last year carried over £222. If all of the grant proposals, grant applications went through this time, what's the word? The new funding would be £1,631, which would go over to next year. I think you've heard the concerns of my colleagues, mainly the cost and the total figure of £1,500 and the future profitability and sustainability of the event. And I was just wondering, is there an alternative figure that you would be comfortable proposing from your reserves that would be appropriate, that would possibly satisfy councillors in order to have some funding towards this event? Because the way I see it at this moment in time, there is not enough support in this chamber at this current moment in time for this grant application to be approved.
I can see where the councillors are coming from. I mean, I hope I explained the background to why we're keeping, that reserve level as it is. If we didn't get any grant and we are running at a loss, then obviously, if we want to put on the same event as we're doing now, then we would take everything from reserves that we needed to do that. I don't think that would be prudent to do. So it would be somewhere between the 1,500 and the zero. But I don't think I couldn't make that decision on behalf of my colleagues on that. But if you are prepared to pay us, to give us a grant towards it, we'd be happy to accept whatever you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. I was feeling similarly. So if there are no more questions, I don't believe there are at this point, I will move us towards the vote. To my own eyes, this is the finances here being taken as self-contained. This is the funding for the free part of the event, of which we are being asked to contribute a small amount, and the expectation from myself certainly would be that this is a combination of a get back up to speed and a COVID recovery type grant. However, yes, let's move towards the vote.
Chair, that motion is drawn.
Proposal. I think the 1,500 is too much, and I think that's obviously quite a feeling of some of the members of this committee.
Sorry, before we go to that, may I just ask what happens in the event of a drawn vote?
Your casting vote.
The casting vote.
Okay. So my understanding is that I have a casting vote. as I feel that there is a feeling that the committee may be unanimous on a lower amount, I am going to say no. Do I need to press a button for that, or do I just say it? I'm going to say no on that one.
That motion's passed.
Lost,
sorry.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, Councillor Strong. Can I hand back to you at this point?
Chairman, I think we obviously, it did come a bit deja vu, though we've done this before. And I think reading the minutes is exactly the same sentiment that we had in terms of grant approval the last time, so which is why it led to it becoming Councillor Bishop's personal grant for the night. And I know I've told the group, but sadly Councillor Bishop passed away today, so which is sad. But I don't know what the amount is that Councillor Munster is thinking of moving.
Thank you. I think that there may be agreement of 750, which would be half of the amount that has been requested. So in that case, I would like to propose that the Southern Rural Community allocates £750 to the applicant. I'm happy to second that second proposal. Is there any further debate on that proposal, or shall I move directly to the vote? Councillor Frost.
I think just one last point. If this is awarded, I think we would have to be clear that this is the last funding for this event that would come from Southern Rural, because otherwise, if they're breaking even every year and looking for grants every year, they could potentially come back every year for funding. So from my stance, if they are awarded this, it's the last funding for this nature for this event.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I think that is the understanding. Can we move to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your amended grant. Conscious of the time, would anyone like a comfort break before we move on to the next item? Okay, that being the case, I will move on to item 7, which is the grants and community update. Amy to present.
Thank you, Chair. The main updates of what the team have been working on are highlighted in the report. I would like to expand further on the first point about the Parish Forum. Firstly, thank you to the committee for your ideas at the meeting in December. We are currently discussing this, and I'm visiting parish council meetings to introduce myself, the work of the community team and the forum idea, and we'll update further on this in the new civic year. Further to the report, I wanted to highlight that we are supporting North Herts Centre for Voluntary Service and Letchworth Heritage Foundation with a community conference called All About Us. The reason for the conference is that towards the end of last year, they launched a survey aimed at all community groups in North Herts to find out the current challenges they are facing. All respondents stated concern about spiralling overheads, growing demands on their services, reduced income, and increased pressures on funders. The conference is to discuss the themes from the survey and learn what support should be in place to help groups. Local funders will also be at the event to share information about grants. This includes the community team, where we will be at the event to share information about the community grant scheme. So the conference will be on the 23rd of March at the Letchworth Broadway Hotel, starting at 9:30 and finishing at 3:30. Further information can be found on North Hart CVS's website. And yeah, we ask members to please do encourage any community groups in your wards to attend the conference. So this part wasn't mentioned in the report, but I thought I'd mention it in the meeting today. And I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Munter.
Thank you. Just two questions. I know Jeanette Thompson sent out a survey regarding the area committees, etc., and how we sort of do things on the committees. I was just wondering whether or not you have any update on that. And then the second question is, were our parish councils invited to the meeting this evening to hear from the police? Because I think that would certainly be a very, very useful exercise.
Thank you. No, I don't have an update on that survey. Parish councils weren't invited by myself, but that is a very good point to raise. I'll send them an email about the recording so they can at least view it. But yeah, that's a very good point.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Unless there are further questions, recommendation 2.2 and 2.3 we have taken as part of public participation. However, recommendation 2.4 is that the committee be recommended to endorse the actions taken by the community engagement team to promote greater community capacity and wellbeing for Southern Rural. I am happy to propose that recommendation. Faye, was that seconding?
Yeah.
And I would suggest we move to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Good stuff. In which case, I will move on to item 8, which is members' reports from ward and outside organisations. And I wanted to open with one for myself this evening. As we may or may not be aware, a few years ago, immediately prior to COVID, a community orchard was planted in Wymondley with donations and sponsorship from various members of the public, of which I was pleased to be able to sponsor a tree. And as this is the first year, both post-COVID and where the orchard could be expected to bear fruit, literally in this case, a wassail was held to drive out the spirits and bless the orchard for the coming year, which tradition dictates will ensure a bountiful harvest. And I was very pleased to be able to attend that. Councillor Munter.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure members are aware of the concerning reports that Luton Airport has submitted a development consent order to the Planning Inspectorate to increase their capacity from 18 million passengers per annum to 32 million passengers per annum. I don't need to remind members that there is currently a public inquiry ongoing and we're awaiting the outcome of the report from 18 million passengers to 19 million, but just want to confirm that I know myself and I'm sure my colleagues are going to do all that we can in order to prevent that expansion, which is going to have only negative impacts to residents, not just in North Hertfordshire, but right across the county.
Thank you. Are there any other ward reports? Councillor Moody.
Just like to say thank you to Amy for attending Codica Parish Council last month. You have some really good feedback. Building work still progresses well within Codica. There's quite a few sites up and running now, Bedlam in the village. But I'd just like to say thank you to yourself for your chair for the full year. It's been enjoyable. Did I? Oh, I'm really sorry. You stole my thing before.
That's all right.
Just thank you very much. Enjoyable year with you being chair.
Yeah. Can we have it minutes? Can we do a motion of
I'm sure that can be minuted without formal motions on my behalf. If there are no more ward matters, then as we come to closing the meeting, I was going to say this is the last meeting of the civic year, and in fact, my last Southern Rural meeting, period. So I wanted to extend my thanks to the officers who worked tirelessly to make this meeting far easier to chair than it could otherwise be. And also my thanks to the members who I think in this committee in particular really work for the best interests of our constituents and do tend to leave politics at the door. So thank you all, and I will close the meeting at 9:20.